Hi everybody, it's Abraham from SimGamer TV, and I'm here with another page of notes. This is for Kerbal Space Program, and here is my honest review. I will give you a warning. Fanboy alert. Fanboy alert on this review. So if you think this review can be more partial, I don't know what to say. It probably can be, but I'm going to do my best to give you guys all the information you need to decide whether or not to join me in playing some Kerbal Space Program. Let's start off with the introduction. Kerbal Space Program is a game where you build and fly your own rocket designs and try to get them to other planets. There are lots of different game modes to play. Well, 3 different game modes to play that kind of hone in on this feature. Kerbal Space Program has been in early access on Steam for quite a while, and so far I would say that Kerbal Space Program is sort of the gold standard of how early access games should work. There are a lot of early access games in the pipeline right now, and if all of them do the kind of things that Kerbal Space Program did, and maybe even improve on them a little bit, then the early access programs, early access games will be really, really awesome. Kerbal Space Program is a create and play game where you create your own rockets and planes, and then you try to fly them to complete things like missions or goals that you've set for yourself. It really depends on what game mode you are playing in, but it's really about building rockets and planes and then flying them yourself to achieve whatever goal you're after. Kerbal Space Program has a robust simulation with a pretty accurate flight model, as well as a really highly accurate orbital mechanics model. It all uses Newtonian physics. It doesn't use, like for other games that are out there or simulations that are out there like Orbital Spaceflight Simulator, they use n-body calculations. This one uses patched conics, which is actually not quite as accurate as the real universe, but it's so close that that most people wouldn't really know the difference, at least not at first. And also that difference in simulation actually makes this game a little bit more approachable and stuff like that. This game has a variety of game modes, so you can start enjoying it right away. There's Sandbox, there is Science Mode, and there's Career Mode. I'm picking arbitrary fingers here to represent those, but those 3 modes give you, Sandbox is wide open, you can do whatever you want to, go with whatever you want to. There aren't any set goals, you just make your own goals. Science Mode is pretty cool because your entire quest is about retrieving science, and the more science you get, the more different parts you can unlock as you progress through that type of game. And Career Mode is about running the entire space agency. You start off with a very small set of a very low set of buildings, and you have to take on contracts and hire astronauts, as well as build your own rockets and fly them to complete those contracts to gain funds, reputation, and science to progress through the career mode. So that's actually my favorite mode of play. Now that we've gotten through that very, very long introduction, let's get on to some of the individual categories. First category, gameplay. Gameplay is solid with a consistent experience. I'm giving this 18 points out of 20. Here is the breakdown. We start off with an accurate simulation, but it's not so accurate that it's unapproachable by people that are learning the game. So the flight model, the flight characteristics and aerodynamics are pretty accurately modeled. The orbital mechanics are highly accurately modeled, and you will learn about those and stuff as you're flying through the missions. So I gave that part a 5 out of 5. There's a high variety of building blocks with which to use to build your ships and planes. That huge variety, that kind of Lego style building is perfect. I can't think of a better way to have done this type of game, so that gets a 5 out of 5. There's a good variety of game modes. You have those 3 modes that I mentioned earlier: Sandbox, Science, and Career Mode, each with their own set of sort of difficulties and stuff like that. So with those varieties of game modes, you have a lot of replayability and stuff like that in the game. So I'm giving that a 5 out of 5. Certain game modes, however, have a steep learning curve and don't really offer a whole lot of help. Also, it's not really clear which game mode is the most approachable and which one you're going to have the easiest time starting with. On that point, I give it a 3 out of 5. Total, 18. On to the next category, which is controls. The controls are excellent, but you can't edit them in the game. So I give that 18 out of 20 points. Here's the breakdown. Controls are customizable, and you can use a flight stick if you're doing atmospheric and orbital maneuvers and stuff like that. But the flight stick is useful, but not required. I play with keyboard and mouse. I haven't actually plugged my flight stick in yet, and I haven't felt like I needed to. I have felt like I might have a little bit of an easier time if I did, but it's never felt like it was required or that the keyboard and mouse controls were a contrived replacement for a flight stick like some other games. So I'm giving that one a 5 out of 5. There are some minor options that are missing, and you can't change the controls in the game, but those are really little inconveniences. Once you learn the flight controls, you're not going to touch them. So I give that part a 4 out of 5. Default controls are easy to use, but take a bit of getting used to. There isn't a key map really released. You'll have to download one of the community ones somewhere. So it does take a little bit of learning to figure out what the default configuration is and where some of those hidden controls are. But you don't need those right away to enjoy the game. I give that a 4 out of 5. The construction controls are intuitive and have deep customization. Every single part has a right-click menu that you can do something to that part to give it some... once you even place the parts, like you can put the parts on the rocket, once you're done placing the parts, you can right-click on it and do some more customization to almost all of the parts to either animate it or see how it's going to open and close, like for the sake of game, for the sake of landing gear, for example, or do things like customize how much thrust a particular type of rocket puts out by default. So the construction mode is really approachable and easy to understand, but it has a lot of really deep options to kind of build out really detailed construction projects the way you want to. So I give that one a 5 out of 5. On to the next category, which is challenge level. The challenge level in this game is high, and sometimes lacks some guidance on how to advance. Overall, I give this a 14 out of 20. The challenge level starts at moderate, but fun. So, you know, learning some of these concepts, it's rocket science after all. Learning some of these concepts isn't easy, but it isn't hard, and it's actually really fun to do along the way. So I give this a 5 out of 5. The learning curve is steep, however, and there are frequent roadblocks with no sort of clear indication as far as where you should go next. So on that point, I give this a 3 out of 5. There are a good set of tutorials overall, but sometimes you can't finish one for some arbitrary reason. So I give the tutorials a 3 out of 5. They are helpful in making you understand the basics of rocket science, but they can be a little bit frustrating at times. And it's hard to, I mentioned this before, but I want to mention it again. It is hard to know what game mode is best to start with, especially for new players. So I give that point a 3 out of 5. On to the next category, presentation. On this, I say simple is good. I give this part a 16 out of 20. Ship parts are simple but detailed. And ships can end up being quite detailed once you put all the parts together, and you have lots of customization on all of that. So I give that a 5 out of 5. The Kerbal Space Center buildings are highly detailed and destructible, but few other buildings can be found around any of the worlds. There's very few sort of stock destinations to go to other than what a contract might tell you to do, or where you decide to go and explore for yourself in sandbox mode. So I give that a 3 out of 5. I would have liked to see some more fixed destinations that are easy to find and sort of witness. The sound is excellent. Flight, crashes, explosions, music, even the menu blips and bobs are all top notch and well done and really add to the game. So I give that a 5 out of 5. The atmosphere for the planets that have atmosphere is well done. There are no clouds, and there aren't any really high-end water effects. This game doesn't need the water effects, but the water itself is just kind of flat and a repeating texture. So that gets a little bit boring rather quickly, but you can quickly overlook that because there's so many other graphical things to look at and do in your ships and other planets. So I give that particular point a 3 out of 5. On to unique elements. This is the last category we're going to take a look at. Kerbal Space Program, quite simply, is one of a kind. On this item, I give it a 20 out of 20. In this game, you get to build your own rockets and planes with a huge variety of tools and options to do so. So that gets a 5 out of 5. Fly your own creations to other planets. No other game has this type of construction built in, where not only do you build your ship, but then you actually fly it to another place, a completely different place, like another planet or moon somewhere. So that gets a 5 out of 5. 100% Newtonian physics. The Newtonian physics uses patched conics, which is a highly accurate representation of how the real world works, especially when it comes to orbiting. But if you want perfect physics, you would end up with n-body physics and sort of that Einsteinian stuff like that. Timescales aren't such that it requires Einsteinian physics. So the Newtonian physics with patched conics is definitely good enough for this game, and is really a great on-ramp to understanding how the real world works. So I have chosen to give that a 5 out of 5. Some might argue that's more of a 4 out of 5 because it isn't perfectly accurate physics, but I think the physics that are in the game are appropriate for the learning curve and difficulty and accuracy of the flight model and stuff like that. So I've chosen to give it a 5 out of 5. Lastly, this game is unique because, essentially, career mode is Rocket Science Tycoon. It's like Roller Coaster Tycoon, which is one of my favorite games of all time, where instead of building your own roller coasters and hoping not to kill or not to kill the riders, or at least make your roller coaster profitable, you're building rocket ships and planes and then flying them and trying to figure out how to make your own space program profitable over time with essentially your own inventions. So that is a completely unique game element that no other game has done without either external tools or heavy modding or something like that. So the conclusion on this game overall is that I'm giving it an 86 out of 100. I guess a case could be made to give it an 85 out of 100 for some people. Once again, I'm kind of fanboy gushing about this game a little bit, but that's what I would say based on all these categories that I would give this game. An 86 out of 100. A solid, fun game, well worth your money. Pretty close to an instant classic. There are some things that could be improved to make this game an instant classic. Certain game modes could actually hold your hand a little bit longer and sort of walk you along how to have fun and excel at it. But part of this game is about failure and discovery and actually having fun while completely blowing up your rocket. The first time you misconstruct a rocket and you hit the spacebar to launch it and it completely explodes on the launch pad in a shower of parts and pieces and explosions going off all over the place, complete with buildings falling down and stuff like that, you think to yourself immediately, I might have done something wrong. Let's go back and take a look. And it's not, it can be a little bit frustrating at times, I guess, if you're having a hard time picking up some of the concepts, which is understandable. But really, as you learn the concepts going on, the game has you fail in a really fun and exciting way. Just completely yard sailing a new plane as it loses control while landing because it wasn't constructed particularly well. It's just, I giggle every time it happens, even though like I'll cover my face with my hands and bury my face in embarrassment doing it on camera and stuff like that. Building a rocket ship that can almost make it to the moon and stranding one of your precious few astronauts in space for who knows how long until you can go and rescue him. Is really fun to do. Like, so these types of failures are actually really fun to go through. And then the success on the other end is extra sweet when you finally stick your first moon landing and full recovery and your pod comes into the atmosphere burning up as it comes down and survives, and you return with a whole bunch of science intact and unlock a million nodes in your science tree and stuff like that. So those types of rewards are really out there in the game, and it's up to you to sort of go get them and have a lot of fun. Here are my recommendations when getting into Kerbal Space Program. First of all, also you should definitely buy this game if you're into space flight sims or even atmospheric flight sims at all, mainly because since you can build your own craft and then fly them. It gives you a really good sense of why the real world works the way it does. Why does an airplane have its wings located at a particular location? Why does a rocket tend to have tail fins at the bottom of the rocket and, say, not the top? Why do you have multiple stages in a rocket? Why can't you just build one big massive rocket with a whole bunch of huge engines and send it off to Jupiter? So all those kinds of things you'll learn along the way, and it's really fun. So definitely pick up this game if you're interested in any of that. It's on sale right now as of this recording, and as of this recording, it released, what's today? 4 days ago. So, you know, it's a new relevant game, #1 on Steam right now, even after all the people who have bought it in early access. Now that it's actually full release, there's a whole new audience joining the game and joining the forum, so you guys should participate. Well, anyway, I've rambled, and I'm gushing once again. Fanboy alert! My recommendations. If you're new to Kerbal Space Program, and you're starting up the game for the very first time, I would say skip the tutorials. Go straight to science mode. Start up a new science mode game. That game mode starts you off with a very small number of parts, and you get to discover sort of how rocketry works from the ground up. Your goal is to launch those rockets, take them various places, and collect science to then unlock additional nodes in the science tech tree, which give you more and more parts to build rockets and do stuff with. The only thing I will say is that the tutorials don't cover, and this is one of the weaknesses, is sort of how to get science. Basically, anything that you can right-click on in flight, right-click on it and take a look at the menu options. You'll find a bunch of things like crew report or EVA or take temperature scan and things like that on little devices that allow you to do a science experiment and gather that science on board your spacecraft. If this were the perfect game, I would say right-clicking on any of those options should bring up a menu, and there should be a clearly indicated little icon next to any action which gets you science. But so anyway, science mode is the way to go if you're starting off with Kerbal Space Program and you want to learn the game as you go along. When you are struggling with certain concepts, or you just have a little bit of time and you want to get away from the main game of building and stuff like that, go through all of the tutorials. The tutorials are pretty good. They give you all of the basic concepts, up to and including some pretty advanced things like learning how to land on and return from the moon, as well as how to reach and recover an asteroid that happens to be orbiting near and the vicinity of Kerbin. So these types of challenges are in the tutorial, and they will teach you how to really get out into space at basically just outside of the front door of Kerbin's sphere of influence, or the vicinity of Kerbin. And once you figure out how to do that, you really open the door up to exploring a huge sort of 1/10 scale model solar system, but it's a big solar system with lots of places to go, with gas giants and moons and other planets with thick atmospheres. And there's even, you need to look for it, I'm not going to spoil it here in the review, but there is another body out there somewhere that has an oxygen atmosphere, which means you could fly a plane there and all sorts of stuff if you maybe built a base station there or something like that. So keep that in mind. There's plenty to do in Kerbal Space Program, including all the tutorials and stuff like that. Once again, conclusion. Let's give this a nice little wrap up. Gameplay, solid with a consistent experience, 18 out of 20. Controls, excellent, but you can't edit them in the game, 18 out of 20. Challenge level, high, lacks some guidance sometimes, 14 out of 20. Presentation, simple is good, 16 out of 20. And unique elements, Kerbal Space Program is a one-of-a-kind game, 20 out of 20. Total conclusion, 86 out of 100, a highly valuable purchase for anyone who's into flight games, space games, and create and play games. So that is it for my honest review. Thanks for watching, and until next time, while it is rocket science, Kerbal Space Program is not that hard.